Pittsburgh Steeler fans, welcome to another episode of Know Your Enemy. If you are watching us live on YouTube, you probably don't understand what you are seeing right now. If you are listening on our podcast, you're probably wondering, why am I hearing this voice again? I am Dave Schofield, co-editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. I am filling in tonight for deputy editor Michael Beck, who was unable to go tonight. I didn't ask why. Someone else knows why. I'm on a need-to-know basis. I don't need to know, but it's okay because the talent is here. Geoffrey Benedict, as always. How are you doing tonight, Geoffrey?
I'm doing good. I'm excited for this week.
The Steelers are undefeated. You got to be excited every week.
Yeah.
And of course, it wouldn't be Know Your Enemy unless we had someone representing the Dallas Cowboys. So we have with us tonight RJ Ochoa. He is the editor of Blogging the Boys, the SB Nation site for the Dallas Cowboys. RJ, how's it going down in Texas?
It's going great, guys. It's great to be with you. Obviously a contentious rivalry, the Cowboys and Steelers. I wish it was a game that would live up to that this particular week, but it is what it is. It's always exciting. There's a lot of narratives going around about the last time the Steelers were in this building when Mike McCarthy was on the opposite sideline. Not one of your fonder memories, I'm sure. But all is well. You know how it is. You guys experienced a season just like this a year ago, and so we're making lemonade as best as we can right now. But hope all is well with you and your families.
Yeah, you are diving right into the very first thing I was going to mention, and that is, how do the 2020 Dallas Cowboys compare to the 2019 Pittsburgh Steelers? I mean, two storied franchises, and here they are kind of dealing with similar things a season apart.
Well, let me say this, and I think this will make sense for the entirety of our conversation. I'm 31 years old. I don't hate the Steelers like, maybe my dad does, or, some of my uncles or things like that. I have a respect for the Steelers. Obviously, Mike Tomlin's been the head coach for a lot of my impressionable life. And so I really, I'm a big fan of the Steelers as a franchise. And so I think, in terms of how the 2020 Cowboys line up with last year's Steelers team, I certainly get the similarities on paper, right? And obviously losing your starting quarterback, the center of your franchise, et cetera. But I don't think they're that comparable in that. What I respect about the Steelers is that Mike Tomlin always finds a way to get it done. And last year's Steelers were in the mix and really gritted it out. And that is a mentality and a disposition that has been really absent within the Dallas Cowboys. A lot of people have equated this Cowboys season to the Cowboys season of 2015, which is when Tony Romo went down after week 3 in the state of Pennsylvania, incidentally, when the Cowboys were visiting the Eagles, actually, week 2. And Tony Romo missed 12 games that year, and the Cowboys went 1-11 in them. And that really kind of highlighted the franchise's inefficiencies in operating without the most important player on your team. And it's obviously very difficult, as you well know, but it's something that Cowboys haven't been able to do. And it's ironic that Cowboys fans are still somehow ungrateful for their franchise quarterback, at least a sector of them. But so, yeah, in that respect, I don't think the teams are that similar, just because I think the Steelers are better. I think they're more well coached, and I think their players are more capable of digging in, or whatever you want to call it, to be able to kind of have that self-pride that we haven't seen from the Cowboys in a long time.
All right, Geoffrey, I'm going to set you up with like a really shallow question, and that is, do you hate the Cowboys as a Steeler fan?
I don't. I was born in 1979. I don't remember the real days of the rivalry. I do remember the 1995 team, and that matchup in the Super Bowl. But that was more just, the Steelers. The Steelers were overmatched, somehow still stayed in the game, and managed to just screw it up horribly by the person who still to this day is not spoken of in the city.
That is true. I mean, so I was born in 78, so I guess I'm the old guy here. I never really had a problem with the Cowboys as much as what drives me nuts is the Cowboys fans around my area. I'm like, oh, the Cowboys. I'm like, why do you like the Cowboys? Are you from Texas? No. Have you ever been to Texas? No, what would you? You know why? Because they were good in the early 90s and they were bandwagon fans. And what's crazy is I actually live in the greater Washington area of the DC area. So therefore, that's a pretty decent rivalry around with people that I'm here with. I've actually been to at the time it was Redskins. I guess now I should say football team and Cowboys game. It was the only reason I went was a friend of mine needed someone that had a 4-wheel drive vehicle because it was an ice storm. And it was, I think the final score was 22 or 23-0 Cowboys, and there was nobody in the stadium. And I went because being a football fan, I'm like, I'll go watch a game. So I had that experience, but these teams only meet every 4 years. So there's a lot of history there, but at the same time, it's not recent history. These two teams have not been, it was the 95 season and Super Bowl 1996 is the last time these two teams were both really relevant at the same time. So I don't think that there's that much there, but I will tell you this, as a season ticket holder, when the Cowboys came to town 4 years ago, my goodness, was I foolish, because I probably could have sold my tickets for so much more than what they went for. But I digress. So RJ, the quarterback situation, you knew this was coming. All right. Is it going to be quarterback number 4 or is it going to be quarterback number 5 that you think is going to be calling the signals here on Sunday?
First of all, I think it's a really interesting point. You mentioned the 2016 game between the two teams. That was the last game before, if you remember, Tony Romo's football is a meritocracy speech. It was that win, which was a very, very, pivotal win for that Cowboys team, that 35-30 win. That kind of, was the point of no return for Jason Garrett in terms of starting Dak Prescott for, really, where we are now, or to where we are now. So the Cowboys have obviously started Dak Prescott and started Andy Dalton, who was concussed, incidentally, in Washington, you mentioned, and now on the COVID list. The Cowboys started Ben DiNucci, who's from the Pittsburgh area, was coached by Mike McCarthy's late brother, I believe. And so this is, whoever it is going to be number 4. And there is some debate, if you want to call it that, as to whether it's going to be Garrett Gilbert, who a lot of college football fans know came in for Colt McCoy in the national championship against Alabama. He was also the quarterback of the Orlando Apollos in the Alliance of American Football. So Garrett Gilbert kind of seems to have the favorite, I don't want to say the betting line is on Garrett Gilbert, but it does seem like that's where it's going to be. The other option for the Cowboys is Cooper Rush, who actually was an undrafted free agent that joined the team in 2017 and beat out what is now the Cowboys offensive coordinator, Kellen Moore, for the right to be Dak Prescott's backup. He was Dak's backup all up until this offseason when the Cowboys landed Andy Dalton and released Cooper. He had a cup of coffee with his former offensive coordinator, Jason Garrett, and the New York Giants before he became available. Ben DiNucci did not play well last week. I don't think any rookie 7th rounder would in week 8 of his first year in the NFL in the unique season that this is. And so I think it'll be Garrett Gilbert, but I don't think whoever it is that they will stand much of a chance. Although the last time Garrett Gilbert played a professional football game, a team involved did leave that field with a 7-1 record, which, is technically possible, I suppose, this Sunday against the Steelers. But obviously, it feels incredibly unlikely. But I do think it'll be Garrett Gilbert. The Cowboys are on a bye next week, so it's hard to know when Andy Dalton will be seen again, maybe 2 weeks from now, the Sunday before Thanksgiving. But number 4 on the season, which is about as painful as it sounds, unfortunately.
All right, I'm going to ask you a follow-up because I'm going to want Geoffrey to answer the same thing. Do you think that the whole not starting Ben DiNucci has to do with going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers defense? Do you think that they're – I think I heard Coach McCarthy say something about, he's a young guy and really struggled and almost made it seem like he didn't want to set him up for failure. But was it that he played that poorly, or what do you think? Why do you think they're ultimately moving on?
I think it's a variety of factors that are really maybe just cousins of the same one. I think it's worth mentioning for the purposes of Ben DiNucci that Jerry Jones appears twice on the radio every week, 105.3 The Fan, which is a very unique situation for the Dallas Cowboys, obviously. And in his Tuesday morning appearance, I don't want to say trashed Ben DiNucci, but was very blunt and said that he wasn't ready. And so that happened to be the morning of the day that it was reported that Andy Dalton was placed on the COVID list. And so I do think it would be difficult for the franchise to go back to Ben DiNucci after Jerry Jones kind of publicly, had those words to say about him. I think it's that. I also think I don't think the Cowboys by any means believe they can win on Sunday, but I was a fan personally of going with Ben DiNucci last week just because, Garrett Gilbert, Cooper Rush, I mean, they have no long-term future with the Cowboys. And perhaps Ben DiNucci is the backup quarterback of the future. Those reps are valuable. How often do you get a chance? I mean, I'm sure you felt similarly about Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges a year ago. And so I do think, though, that you're at a point, given how badly he played, that you're doing more harm than good. Especially, I mean, sort of this would be a baptism by fire against the Steelers specifically. And so I also think, Ben DiNucci's play isn't allowing any of your other players to get any experience. One of the things you have to do at this point, if you're the Cowboys, in terms of looking towards the future, you have to get CeeDee Lamb, some live game action. And that's just not going to happen with Ben DiNucci as his quarterback. So I think you have to put all your eggs in particular baskets. And Ben DiNucci, unfortunately, doesn't let that happen.
Geoffrey, what are your thoughts here on the Cowboys quarterback situation? And can you draw some comparisons to what Steeler fans went through with Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges last year?
Well, I think the Steeler fans can all remember, Devlin Hodges against the New York Jets and against the Baltimore Ravens at the end of the year. When they put Mason Rudolph back in, we're like, wait, we can't just throw games like this. And the difference with Devlin Hodges is Devlin Hodges isn't someone the Steelers have investment in.
Mm-hmm.
So they could kind of leave him out there and be like, you know what, kid, you're going to take your lumps and we're going to lose this game, but that's all we have. That's what's going to happen. Yeah. Whereas with the Cowboys are like, we have something invested in this kid. We want to keep him around. So it makes sense to bring in some people. It makes sense to throw some veteran retread people there that are hanging on. They're hanging on to a football career. They want a chance to get into a game. Let them get in there. You don't have a lot of investment in them, and you see what they can do. Let them show what they can do. Give them a chance.
Yeah, I'm actually a little bit concerned about this because I said it on the show that I do with my brother last night. Is I'm like, how did I phrase that? Hey, Steelers, don't let the Cowboys duck you up. In other words, sometimes you get that new fresh guy coming in, and how many times is it a glory story of, oh my goodness, someone you've never heard of comes in and takes down this great team. I mean, it would be a fantastic story. Don't be on the other side of that story is the one thing that the Steelers are looking for. And then the question is, I'm going to bring this up because we have a super chat from Sean Manahan. He puts $2 into the tip jar for us. Thank you, Sean. And he wants to know this from RJ. Do you want to win on Sunday or you want to tank for Trevor?
That I hesitate because Twitter is amok with all sorts of opinions on Trevor Lawrence or a variety of other players performing well at the collegiate level. And I'm a huge fan of Dak Prescott, and I don't know that you'll find a bigger Dak Prescott fan than me. And I think this whole situation has been incredibly botched by the Cowboys in terms of not paying Dak. I think they should have paid Dak 2 years ago when he first became eligible. I mean, the number of quarterbacks they've allowed to get extensions to, raise his market value. They allowed Jared Goff and Carson Wentz and Pat Mahomes, and next offseason, Lamar Jackson is eligible for a contract extension. So is Josh Allen. I mean, all these players are going to raise the market value of the quarterback position. And something a lot of people don't get is, because you get your people like, you can't pay Dak what Russell Wilson's getting. Yeah, okay, well, if you want a 2021 Honda Civic, I mean, you got to pay what that's worth, and that's the reality of it. And not that Dak is a Honda Civic by any means. And so I'm not a fan of starting over in that regard. I'm sure Trevor Lawrence will be an excellent professional, but the Cowboys have already found a franchise quarterback. They stumbled into him. If Steelers fans are unaware, in 2016, the Cowboys tried to trade back up into the first round to draft Paxton Lynch. In the fourth round, they tried to draft Connor Cook. Dak Prescott was in many ways a settlement for them, and they only played him because Tony Romo got hurt and Kellen Moore broke his ankle, ironically. And so, I'm not a fan of casting a net into the ocean, however wide the Trevor Lawrence net might be. That being said, while I'm certainly a fan of the Cowboys winning games and it's fun, winning does no good at this point. And, congratulations to the Eagles. If they're the NFC East victors, I don't consider losing to the Saints in the wild card round some sort of prize. Or if it's the Bears, whoever it may be. But the Cowboys are in dramatic need of elite help. And the last time the Cowboys naturally were in the top 5 picks of an NFL draft, they took a running back. And that's obviously not the best usage of that resource. And so I'm definitely a fan of losing organically, albeit I certainly would love to see experience, not just for the players, but for Mike McCarthy and his staff. I mean, these are rough waters in a lot of ways, but especially in the football sense of it all.
Yeah, Geoffrey, as a Steelers fan and just an overall NFL fan, what are your feelings? What do you about Dak Prescott and how the Cowboys, should handle that situation, and what do they have with him?
I really like Dak Prescott as well. He's one of those guys that's shown he knows how to play. He doesn't have – he's not a guy who sits there and just, looks the part of a quarterback. You don't sit there and see him go through a throwing motion and be like, oh, wow, look at that ball he threw. But he makes smart decisions. He's a good player. I actually have a stat I wanted to highlight for Steelers fans in this game.
Here we go.
To show just how well Dak Prescott was playing to start this season. When Dallas's defense was pretty terrible. In this game, the Steelers have 4 good receivers, but if you add the Steelers and the Cowboys rosters together, if you just consider all the players in this game and you take their receiving yards per game, the Cowboys, with 3 games having been played by these backup quarterbacks, including some absolutely terrible quarterback play, have the 3 receivers averaging the most yards per game. 3. All 3 of their top 3 guys are all ahead of everyone on the Steelers. The number 1 tight end in the game for yards per game receiving is a Cowboy. And the number 1 running back for yards per game receiving is a Cowboy. And that's based off what Dak Prescott did in 5 games. And those 3 other games have brought those numbers down, but not enough to even put them down to where we are right now with the Steelers passing game and Ben Roethlisberger. So while Dak Prescott may not have the clout in the media of being this great quarterback, he puts up numbers and he does a good job. You watch the film, he's a good quarterback. He really is. And so I am a fan of Dak Prescott. And I think the Cowboys are absolutely right to keep him. I think that's the smartest move. And if they happen to get a super high pick, I mean, goodness, you could trade that down. If you're in the range to actually get Trevor Lawrence, how much is that pick worth?
Oh my goodness.
Really?
You're right. You're exactly right. And I really like Dak Prescott as well. I think the Cowboys did make a mistake by not signing him. And it's funny because you don't want to be left in a situation like the Detroit Lions were several years ago. And they're like, we're going to pay Matt Stafford so much money because what are we without him? And I mean, but he wasn't, in my opinion, a top of the league quarterback whenever he ended up getting paid. I think Dak Prescott now is better than what Stafford was at the time that he was setting records with his deal. I highlighted some numbers for my Steelers Stat Geek show, which will be coming out Thursday morning on our audio platform. And the Dallas Cowboys are still the number 1 passing offense in the NFL when you take into account yards per game, because not everyone's played the same amount of games. You can't just say it's because they had the extra game. But that just goes to show you everything that they were doing when Dak was there, because Dak went down against the Giants. They had 276 passing yards in that game. Since then, they went 247, 59, and 132. So with that play, that just goes to show you how much they were doing with Prescott. So what that really comes down to now is, what about this defense? RJ, are you surprised? Were you expecting more out of this Cowboys defense when the 2020 season started?
So the Cowboys offensive line is in shambles. I mean, that's a big reason why they have some offensive struggles as well. But obviously for so long, I think, most NFL fans have known the Cowboys offensive line is sort of been the biggest strength of the team. That's been up for a debate, I'd say, over the last year or so. About circa 2018, there was some discussion that maybe the Cowboys linebackers were entering that discussion. That was Leighton Vander Esch's rookie season, and that was Jalen Smith's kind of coming out party. And so, okay, cool. Now you've got Leighton, you've got Jalen, you've got Sean Lee off the bench, obviously a Pennsylvania guy in his own right. And so, there was a lot of hype around that. Entering this season, Pro Football Focus graded the Cowboys linebackers as the second best linebacking group in the NFL. Outside of that, there was a lot of hype about the Cowboys pass rush this year. DeMarcus Lawrence is obviously a household name. The Cowboys signed Everson Griffin, who they've already traded away this season to the Detroit Lions. So you mentioned they had Aldon Smith as a project. They had Randy Gregory as a hopeful. So they had things to really like. I thought the Cowboys pass rush would be solid, and that was not even factoring in getting anything legitimate out of Aldon Smith. But obviously that happened, and not much else has it. DeMarcus Lawrence doesn't have the sack numbers that a lot of elite pass rushers get. So he's not as regarded as highly by Cowboys fans, but I'd still put him up there as the team's best defender. But overall, I mean, the Cowboys players have pointed a lot of fingers. There was an anonymous report a few weeks ago, which I'm sure both of you saw, about dissension between the players and the coaching staff. Mike Nolan, the former head coach of the 49ers, obviously has bounced around a few ways. A very close confidant of Mike McCarthy's is their defensive coordinator. And a lot of players have said it's too complicated of a scheme and whatnot. And I don't want to strip away any, detail or logic and just kind of rely on cliches. But the general consensus is that the Cowboys defense prior to last week really, I mentioned it earlier, had no self-pride. And I think that is a big difference between them and the Steelers of last year, or even the Eagles teams of Doug Peterson's reign, in that, this is a group that has investments. DeMarcus Lawrence is a second-round pick. Jalen Smith is a second-round pick. Chidobe Awuzie, one of their cornerbacks, is a second-round pick. Jordan Lewis is a third-round pick. They paid Everson Griffin. They gave Jalen Smith a second contract. Leighton Vander Esch is obviously a first-round pick. And so they've got those guys. And yeah, there were some injuries. Obviously, Leighton Vander Esch got hurt in the season opener, but more than that, I mean, this is just a group that doesn't respond well. And we've seen that at different times. This is a group that is certainly overrated, and I think buys into that hype. Chris Richard is a very well-known name, obviously part of the team that assembled the Legion of Boom in Seattle, was kind of the pseudo Cowboys defensive coordinator a year ago. There's some thought that he's missed, that tenacity is missed, but the Cowboys defense did respond last week, I should give them some credit, although part of that was that they got to go up against an Eagles offense that is struggling as well. But overall, I think it's just a lack of passion. And their offense, to be totally fair, has not done them an enormous amount of favors. The Cowboys have turned the ball over on their own side of the field quite often. I would expect that to continue on Sunday. And, I think the Atlanta game is a really good example. Everybody remembers certainly the watermelon kick that ended that. But early on in that game, the Cowboys coughed the ball up twice inside their own 30-yard line. And the Cowboys defense, held, actually, didn't allow touchdowns every time. And that's a hard thing to do. But overall, I think it's just an overrated group that is Jalen Smith is the face, I think. And a lot of Cowboys fans have really had it with him. He's a remarkable story, as every college football fan knows. And the fact that we can even sit here and, pick at his NFL playing is a miracle. But he's kind of the microcosm. He's this big face, big brand that the Cowboys have really invested a lot into, that is just kind of an average to below average player at the absolute best.
Yeah, I was surprised when I was looking at the numbers that the Cowboys defense is not that bad against the pass. It's that they're last in the league against the run.
There's not a lot of passing necessary. And I should mention, I'm sorry to cut you off, that
no.
if you're unaware, Every Cowboys fan in the world is so bitter that the team did not draft TJ Watt. He was a favorite of many Cowboys fans entering that draft. And to make matters worse, the Cowboys drafted Taco Charlton. So, the Cowboys message was that TJ's arms weren't long enough. They didn't see him play enough defensive end at Wisconsin. And so, we've all been kind of waiting for this moment, right? Like the TJ Watt destroys the Cowboys game to prove the front office wrong. Unfortunately, if you're a fan of chaos, it's not going to come in this moment that it counts. Like everything's already terrible. But that is a sort of underlying narrative to this game as well for a lot of Cowboys fans.
That's really interesting because I always looked at TJ Watt as the guy that was passed over by Green Bay, who didn't take him and traded out of the spot where they could have taken him. So, Geoffrey, have you been able to do much film breakdown or anything of the Cowboys defense at all to kind of explain what you've seen about what the Steelers could, maybe what they should be trying to attack or trying to do against that defense?
The Cowboys have some interesting things. I mostly looked at Philadelphia. I looked at their last game because their defense actually played significantly better in that game. I did notice Jalen Smith. Yeah, he doesn't look like he looks like he's there. He's moving a lot, but you're like, what are you actually doing? Like, are you gonna make a play? Or are you gonna just run around a lot and watch? I did notice an interesting thing that I think could really explain a lot of their struggles against the run. Looking at their snap count numbers, because you've got defensive ends playing like you're playing like 3 defensive ends and 1 defensive tackle, and really like I understand the Steelers have done that quite a bit with moving TJ or Bud back of the line and having them just be an extra defensive line blitzer, but it's interesting to see the Cowboys do it with with how their players are aligned.
So I would say to that the Steelers generally do that out of innovation, right, and out of creativity, whereas the Cowboys do that out of necessity or settlement. And it should be said that of all, I mean, there are a number of injuries the Cowboys have sustained. Today, the day we're doing this, their punter, it was announced Chris Jones is undergoing core muscle surgery on Thursday, so the Cowboys are down a punter even. But the first injury of the season for the Cowboys technically was Joe McCoy, their biggest free agent signing, and so they lost him for the year. Tristan Hill was the team's second round pick a year ago when they didn't have the first rounder because they had traded it away for Amari Cooper the season prior, and a lot of people hated Tristan Hill. Had a really, really underwhelming rookie year in 2019, but really came on strong hardly this year. And honestly was the team's best defensive tackle. The game against the New York Giants when Dak Prescott was lost, Tristan Hill tore his ACL. Another unfortunate loss for the team. So the Cowboys are down their 2 top defensive tackles. One of their top defensive tackles entering the year was projected to be Dontari Poe, who they signed also in free agency. They released him last week because he'd been so underwhelming. And so they're down in terms of bodies, but a lot of it is like Tyrone Crawford is a guy the Cowboys have floated inside and outside for years. They've never been able to find true success for him. He's been underwhelming at both. But yeah, that's part of the reason is that they're just so down, they're so beat up, and they don't have really any other options. It's just part of the unfortunate season that they've had so far.
I also wanted to ask you, Chidobe Awuzie, how big was his loss on the team? I noticed Jordan Lewis is getting a lot more action than he did last year. Is that going to be a factor when he comes back that could really help this defense, maybe get up to being, solid?
Cheeto is probably the most athletic corner that the Cowboys have. And he's in a contract year, just like Jordan Lewis and just like the Cowboys safety Xavier Woods. They were all drafted together in the draft that the Cowboys passed on TJ Watt. And so, I mean, he's I guess their best corner. And so if they were to get him back, he would help. He would mitigate in that regard. Entering last week's game in Philadelphia, Cheeto actually had the team's only interception on the year, and it was in week 1 against the Rams. It was actually a play that shouldn't have counted. Aldon Smith grabbed a whole lot of Jared Goff's face mask, but Trayvon Diggs had 2 interceptions himself. And I would honestly say that Trayvon Diggs is maybe not the team's best cornerback, but certainly their most hopeful one. And he's certainly somebody that's experiencing baptism by fire himself. But you hope that those are learning experiences, and he'll sort of mold into a great player, and he'll become the guy the team needs when it all counts in 2021 and beyond. But I suppose getting Cheeto back is helpful, but not to dodge the question, but the player the Cowboys truly miss is somebody they thought they could live without, and that's Byron Jones, who's playing extremely well for the Miami Dolphins. The Cowboys, on the subject of interceptions, Byron Jones had one interception during his career with the Cowboys, and a lot of fans, harped on that. What are we going to miss for the corner that only has one interception? It's like, dude, this guy is an athletic marvel. And he's proven it with Miami, and it's really impressive what that team and organization is doing as well. But that his lack of presence is very, 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 very felt.
Okay.
All right. Well, hey, we're coming to the very end of the part one of our show, so we're going to have RJ stick around for a little bit longer. I don't know. I know you have other stuff that you need to do, but we're going to have a few more questions for you in part 2 before we sum this up. So if you're listening to us in audio form, make sure you get ready to click on that second part. If you're with us here on YouTube, don't go anywhere. We'll be back in just a moment. And we are back with Know Your Enemy. I am Dave Schofield, co-editor behind thesteelcurtain.com, filling in for Deputy Editor Michael Beck tonight. Geoffrey Benedict, he's here. He's ready to go. We've got RJ Ochoa from Blogging the Boys. See, I said it right both times. I didn't put the with in there. I got it. Blogging the Boys. It's not with the boys. We got it. Talking about this matchup coming up. There's some interesting things still. I mean, right now, the last I checked, it's a 14-point. I mean, the Steelers are favored by 14.
It's not enough.
That's unheard of. Steelers fans are super worried because when it seems like the more the Steelers are favored, they feel the more likely they are to lose. That's a little bit of a myth. I covered that one on my Stat Geek show, so make sure you check out that one as well. But they also don't cover as easily. But you're not trying to cover; you're just trying to win. But you have to remember that the Cowboys, they're a game and a half out of the division. Now, really, tiebreakers a little bit, yeah, but they're a game and a half out of being in a playoff spot. I mean, the Cleveland Browns are 5-3 and further out of the division than what the Cowboys are because they're playing in the NFC East. So, RJ, even though everything is down and everything is woe is me, seriously, can this team make a push and get that spot and lose that opening, host that opening round that they can lose to the top team that didn't win their division, or what? Or what do you really, what as a Cowboys fan do you want out of this season at this point?
So entering their week 8 game against the Philadelphia Eagles, the Cowboys were either the only team or one of 2 teams, I believe, in NFL history to be 0-7 against the spread in the first 7 games of the season. They are now 0-8 against the spread. And so if you've got some jelly beans or whatever on this game, I would feel very comfortable, honestly. And that isn't, the self-deprecating, whatever. I mean, the Cowboys are down everybody. They have, literally, historically, one of the worst defenses to ever play this game. They have a team full of quit. They're down to Garrett Gilbert or Cooper Rush, a quarterback. I mean, everything about this, it's almost funny. I mean, that's you kind of look for that. Everything about this season has sort of highlighted to the Cowboys all of their mistakes over the last couple of years. And they chose to extend a running back and an off the ball linebacker last offseason. That has blown up in their face in Zeke Elliott and Jalen Smith. They chose not to extend Dak Prescott. He has proven every week more and more to be the center of their franchise. They hired Mike McCarthy, and while he has dealt with a number of variables, both, culturally related and obviously a lot of football ones, that doesn't look great right now. And so there is dysfunction brewing within the Cowboys. And so I don't I don't want the Cowboys to win personally. I mean, at this point, yeah, I mean, because like, what's the best case scenario? Okay, cool. We all get a cap and T-shirt at Christmas time if they win the NFC East. Awesome. Like when I would never wear that ever again. You know what I mean? Like I would wear it for the photo I would throw on Instagram, and then that would be it, because it would be nothing but like a cone of shame for the rest of my life.
You know what? I really see it. I'm just feeling for Geoffrey. What are your thoughts on RJ's assessment of how do you we didn't experience that at all last year with the Steelers. At least you or I didn't. We still were holding on that this team's defense was good enough. They can still maybe make some noise in the postseason. As Mike Tomlin says, if they can't score, you can't lose. So.
Well, we had a little bit of that. Go back to the first 2 weeks of the season of 2019 when we did not have a safety. No. We didn't have a free safety, and this defense honestly looked like trash. This looked like the worst defense. And then Minkah Fitzpatrick comes on board, and all of a sudden they're a top 5 defense, and everyone's like, holy crap, how do you do anything against the Pittsburgh Steelers? Where for 2 weeks against Russell Wilson and Tom Brady, our defense was a joke. Yeah. So what I've looked at with the Cowboys is there are some missing pieces, but what I'm hearing here is the bigger problem might be the culture. Yeah. It might be it's more than just these players are missing, and hey, next year they'll be back. Dak will be back. You patch this hole, patch that hole, and bam, we could be the 7-0 team. But instead of that, what I'm hearing is that this team has serious problems, and maybe if this goes bad enough, it might be enough to blow it up and maybe get some of these things addressed.
And I want to ask RJ about this real quick before we get into our final questions for the night. Do you think there's a problem with not the right fit with your players and your new coaching staff? Do you think that's part of the culture issue, or do you think it's something else?
So I'm not from the Pittsburgh area, but obviously there's a lot of cliches about it, right? And you've got the blue collarness of it all. And Mike McCarthy is from there. Likes to get his hands dirty, maybe likes to use his polo to wipe his face when he's eating a sandwich, whatever. He's that guy. And the Cowboys do have a country club sort of culture. And I think that maybe there isn't a meshing. And I think, you go look at the roster turnover when he first took over the Green Bay Packers in 2006 we don't have to necessarily talk about the highest point of success he's had, because I know it's a painful memory for you guys. But there was a great amount of turnover in those 4 years. And I do buy into that. I do believe that there are guys that don't fit what the head coach is doing, especially when things have been the same way for the Cowboys for so long. I'm sure NFL fans look at the Star in Frisco, the Cowboys training complex, or AT&T Stadium, obviously their home venue. Those places, for the most part, were entirely under the Jason Garrett era. Jason Garrett was the Cowboys head coach for a decade. And that's really crazy to think about, but that's a long-standing culture. And a lot of that culture is really good. The Cowboys certainly care about the community, and Jason Garrett really prioritized finding the right kind of guy, was his particular phrase. But you could certainly accuse the Cowboys of going the opposite direction of that many times. But I do think that there's an issue, and I think that that's the difference with last year's team. And you mentioned it, Geoffrey, about trading for Minkah Fitzpatrick. That is one very interesting example, because the Cowboys have refused to invest any high-level resource in a safety. They were obviously very interested in Earl Thomas, as everybody knows. They were somewhat interested in Minkah Fitzpatrick. They were obviously connected to Jamal Adams. They have had opportunities to draft safeties. They passed on, a number of them many times in different NFL drafts. And they just believe that you can throw some dude back there. And I'm not saying a lack of safety is why the Cowboys haven't won a Super Bowl in almost 30 years, but it's part of it. And I think that that's, an issue with how they view football. And I think that does need a reset in a lot of ways. And I think that takes time. When you get a new head coach, sometimes his beliefs take time to hold. Not everybody's fortunate enough to have 3 coaches over the last 5 million years like the Pittsburgh Steelers.
That's a really good point. And it starts from the top down. It always does. I don't know how Cowboys fans really feel about Jerry Jones. I do know how the rest of the league feels about him. So we'll just kind of leave it at that. Before we get into the final question, which is going to be your game prediction, the next to last thing that Michael's telling me, hey, make sure you ask this. So I'm going to do this one. What is your X factor in this game this week? You could be, I don't care if it's Cowboy, if you want to say it's a Steeler, that's kind of up to you. What do you think is the biggest X factor in the game, RJ?
I certainly peruse the behind the steel curtain comment section as much as I can. The second best SB Nation site there is, for obvious reasons. But I don't quite know the pulse of how Steelers fans view James Conner as an example. I know that league wide he has his own reputation and obviously a great story in his own right as well. I think James Conner is the X factor. I mean, I think every Cowboy or every running back the Cowboys have faced has run all over them, and the Cowboys are a get right team in that respect. And I think if there has been, I feel like I've seen some people down on James Conner or ready to move on or whatever you want to call it. I think that this is the elixir for that. And so I think James Conner controls this game. I hate to be super cliche, like, Steelers are going to dominate time possession, whatever. But I think that the amount of times James Conner wins will dictate the way this goes. And I think that that's going to be a lot.
Yeah. Geoffrey, how would you sum up Steelers fans with James Conner? They don't talk about what he does. They like to talk about when he's not there. They love to talk about the injury.
James Conner. We love James Conner until he fumbles the ball or he's injured.
Yeah.
Then everyone's like, "Ooh, he fumbles at the worst times," or he's always unhealthy. The big story with James Conner that continues to kind of be a narrative that looks like it might be true is when he gets a lot of carries, when he gets a lot of snaps, and he is that feature back who doesn't leave the field, his production goes down throughout the game. So this to me he's really good, and he's even better when you limit his carries and his snaps. He's just that kind of player. He runs so hard that I don't think he can keep it up for too many touches. He's not an Ezekiel Elliott. He's not a Derrick Henry who can sit there and run all day and keep going.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right, Geoffrey. I think in this game, I know that this is supposed to be more focused on the Cowboys, but this is also them being able to handle what the Steelers have. And I would not be surprised if this is a game where you don't see much of James Conner in the second half and you see a whole lot of Benny Snell, just because of how the game could play out. And, Snell with his hard running style didn't get a single carry or offensive snap last week because the Steelers barely ran the ball. Geoffrey and I broke down how they basically threw their way back into the game and kind of abandoned the run. But Geoffrey, do you have an X factor you want to talk about for this game?
My X factor is Ezekiel Elliott.
Okay.
Because the Pittsburgh Steelers' vaunted run game without Tyson Alualu and without Devin Bush was not.
Yeah.
It was not a run defense. We were the Ravens could run one way and we would send the whole house there because if we didn't get there, they were going to break a run. And they just cut back and it was wide open again. So with Ezekiel Elliott, I could see if you're going to have an X factor in this game, if you're going to have a situation where the Cowboys keep this close, that's what I always look at. How do the Steelers lose this game? Ezekiel Elliott would have to take over the game. Yeah. And number two, the narrative of the Steelers losing trap games. I've seen it so many times in the chat today. This sounds like a trap game. The more we talk bad about the Cowboys, they're like, "Oh, this sounds like a trap game."
Yeah.
Is it Ben Roethlisberger on the road in games against teams that aren't supposed to be good and don't get a lot of press, tends to play bad, and he especially is bad on the West Coast. I like bringing this up that for his entire career, Ben Roethlisberger for the Steelers has as many wins west of the Rockies as Devlin Hodges does.
Yeah.
They have the same number of wins west of the Rockies. Ben Roethlisberger is like 2-7. Devin Hodges is 2-0. If Ben has a really bad game and Ezekiel Elliott gets going, you could see this game be one of those games where the Steelers are like, "What's going on? Why are the Cowboys in it?" And the Cowboys, because they'd be like, "Wait, we can win a game? Like, we're going to beat the Steelers?" I could see that happening and kind of getting them going. So my X factor is Ezekiel Elliott. If he can run all over the Steelers the way the Ravens did, then the Cowboys have a chance.
I think you're exactly right. I think it goes right back to how we were thinking of Saquon Barkley when the Steelers went to face off in week 1. They had to take him out because that was the biggest thing they had to worry about. RJ, I know you need to get going. Last question. Prediction.
Well, I think it's flattering that you guys believe in Ezekiel Elliott. I think Cowboys fans would laugh at that notion right now.
Has a bit of a fumbling issue as of late.
Yeah. It's hilarious that at one point in time, people asked, is Dak only Dak because of Zeke? Stephen Jones famously referred to Ezekiel Elliott as the straw that stirs the drink. That really hasn't been the case, unfortunately. So the idea of Zeke taking over a game, as big of a fan as I am of Zeke, just does kind of seem preposterous, honestly. But I would love to be proven wrong. I think the Steelers cover easily. I think the Steelers get a defensive touchdown. I think this is your classic. Enjoy the Red Zone channel for the first part of Sunday. Lock down, get your meal, get your high fives ready or your socially distanced, ways of celebrating. And then, kind of sit back, relax, and enjoy your behind the steel curtain content as Sunday Night Football rolls in. That's just who the Cowboys are this season. And it's unfortunate that such a great rivalry has to be spent this way. But I'm excited for what the matchup will look like in 2024 in Pittsburgh. I went to the game in 2016, and the last thing I wanted to say was, my dad and I, we travel to a road game every year for the Cowboys, obviously not this year. And that's by far my favorite environment that I've been to. It really is such a special place. I'm a big fan of NFL history, and so I do have a deep respect for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And so I'm excited for this game. I'm very interested to see what the Steelers season looks like. I do think they're slept on. I think they're the best team in the AFC.
Well, yeah, who knows? If you got really good seats in the lower level in the end zone, you might have had mine, because apparently I didn't price them high enough because they were gone in about 45 seconds. And then I saw how much everything was. So
this is a story for another day. But my dad and I, we sat next to Franco Harris. It was really cool. It was an awesome experience to watch the Cowboys win in those particular circumstances.
All right, now we all love you. Okay, that's just how it works. We know that you have your own podcast to get to. Geoffrey and I are going to stick around and break down a little bit more, but we wanted to thank RJ for coming with us. And I'd say it would be nice to see you again before it's 4 years, but that would take a Super Bowl matchup. So, maybe 2021. We'll see what happens.
Hey guys, it would be awesome to see the Cowboys and Steelers meet in the Super Bowl. Maybe in LA, that would be kind of NFL-y for it to happen that way. But whoever it is, I don't know if I'll be rooting for the Steelers, but I'm excited to see this journey. I'm excited to see Ben Roethlisberger's career kind of finish up, and I'm excited to see how Mike Tomlin keeps that team going, because if anybody's going to find a way, I think it's going to be him.
All right. Well, hey, thank you so much for joining us here, and. If you're a Cowboys fan that stumbled in here, make sure you go checking out bloggingtheboys.com. That's the SB Nation site for the Dallas Cowboys. Great site. There's a few top-notch NFL sites, and you've got two of them represented here right now. So thank you very much.
Appreciate it, guys. Have a good week. Enjoy the game.
All right, you too. Geoffrey, I'm going to, first of all, I got to get your prediction. I needed to let him go because we know that he had another engagement to get to, but I wanted to get your prediction for this game.
I've been really trying hard to figure out a way to predict this game to be 27-17 in favor of the Steelers, but I don't think it's going to be that close. You heard me say my X factor. My X factor is always, how could this game be completely not what we think it could be, and how would that happen? And it would take, in my opinion, an enormous game from Ezekiel Elliott or any of the running backs on Dallas, just running roughshod through the Steelers to really create that kind of opportunity. I don't see it happening. I'm going to go 32-9.
I think you might have taken my score. I'm going to have something very similar tomorrow night on the preview. Sorry I didn't get to this when RJ was still here. I kept it up here for a while. Sean threw in another $2 into the tip jar. And you know what? He was going to agree with us.
Yes.
With the Rudies, they're better than Jerry Jones. We all know this. I mean,
Absolutely.
Sean, I tell you this. We appreciate the $2. You just wasted $2. Yeah, that's like saying water is wet.
Yeah.
So Geoffrey, I have an idea. Unless you have something you really want to do, I want to take about 5 to 7 minutes, and I want to do an Ask Geoffrey segment from everyone in the live chat. How often do they get to just ask you stuff? It's going to be specifically for Geoffrey. Remember, he's the film guy. So
I want to start with, no, I'm not single. Sorry, ladies. I don't know.
What's really funny is you and I are really in a very similar stage in our life, doing this for the Steelers for fun. Primary caregivers for our kids. Our kids are similar ages. We're very similar in age. It's some good stuff. So I put that out there in the live chat for anyone. I'm now looking for a question. I know sometimes it takes a couple minutes to get through. If anyone has a specific question, hopefully Steelers wise or Cowboys wise, okay. Super Steelers wants to know if Geoffrey misses Toys R Us. Since, in case you don't get the reference, because it was Geoffrey the giraffe.
Yeah,
that was the mascot. So
yeah, I used to get that. I used to get called Geoffrey Giraffe. I actually have a really long neck. You can see. I used to get called Geoffrey Giraffe, but also Toys R Us was my favorite place in the world.
Oh, I mean,
I do miss it.
Their toys were too expensive, but as a kid, my kids would love to just because it's everywhere. You just go
the clearance. I lived for the Toys R Us clearance rack in most days, man. You sort through all the broken toys and find one that wasn't broken enough that you could still play with.
Yes. See, now growing up, I didn't live close to a Toys R Us, so as I got older, I appreciated someone older, and especially with my kids, it was always great. We got another super chat, $2 from Darkstorm 1 to tell us water is wet.
So that might be the most controversial super chat we've had today. That might be the number one. Sir, you're stirring things up here.
All right, here's another one that's in reference to last night. Donald wants to know if you've seen the movie Contact.
Oh, I didn't miss the show, man.
Huh?
I don't know what the reference is.
Huh? It was from our show last night. It's because I'm messing up some. It's somebody's screen name on that I keep messing up on the Scobro show, and they say it's from the movie Contact, and I'm like, I saw that movie in the theater when it was out, and I haven't seen it since. So I don't know. So if
I can't grab the quotes here, but the one right underneath that one, the question.
Okay. Oh, you ready? You want that one? The double HH?
Geoffrey. Yeah. Okay.
What do the Steelers need to do different when Buggs and Mondu play more snaps?
Isaiah Buggs, everyone talked about Isaiah Buggs' difference in the first and the second half. You're going to hear a lot of people tell you he had a great, something happened. He was fired up. That first half, he was favoring his ankle.
You kept saying he was
one
injured.
Leg. He would brace. He would have that bracing leg. He put his other foot down and pick it back up. Like, ow. Like, he was in pain. I would tell you he was in pain. And one of the things that the NFL has is the really good legal prescription painkillers. And when he came out in that second half, Isaiah Buggs was on the good drugs.
That's what you said.
This is all I'm going to tell you. He was on those good drugs. That's what happened. He played a phenomenal game after that.
And you said got to get as much from them as early as you can before they wear off, because he got the good stuff.
He did. Then he tore up that second half. In this game, I'm not that worried. The Cowboys' offensive line is crap.
Yeah,
they're really bad.
They're hurting. They're hurting.
They've got receivers,
especially when you compare to what they used to be.
Yeah, like the Cowboys have receivers. They don't have an offensive line to run the ball anymore, and they don't have a quarterback that can get the receivers the ball. Yeah. That's what they have. This is a bad team. So for this, Mondo, he's close, man. He is close. I think he's pretty good. He's just
not a super big guy. He's kind of small for a defensive tackle, I think.
He's there. He's close to making plays, and it's been. I mean, if you want to pick a worse way to start your career, coming in for an undefeated team, playing against the Tennessee Titans and Derrick Henry, you have a really good run blocking team with the best running back in football, and the next week you walk face first into the nastiest rivalry in the NFL against the team that wants to run all over you, and Tyson Alualu goes down, and all of a sudden they're like, "Hey, Mondo, you're up. Hold the line." And that's rough. That is a rough way to start your career. I think Mondo is going to be fine. I think Bugs is. I'm a big fan of Bugs. Yeah. I'm a big fan of Bugs.
Mm-hmm. Do you know what? I'm a big fan of the Steelers system on the defensive line because it doesn't matter who they put in there. It seems like they're churning out some of the top defensive linemen in the league. I mean, 2 years in a row, all their guys, the guys are getting the snaps are all ranked up in there. If you are okay with PFF rankings, because it's just what Steelers do with them. Okay. Cree wants to know, with the young kids playing on D, will they be able to really stop Zeke?
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with our guest. Yeah. He's not really that much of a threat. There is a chance.
I just am thinking of the last time he played the Steelers and he busted through the line for that 30-yard touchdown.
That this team is putting things together. I wanted to kind of talk about that, but I don't think he would have had any of this. That they looked like they were starting to put things together a little bit against Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of wanted to bring that, kind of comparing them to the 2019 Steelers and how the 2019 Steelers really came together on defense and carried the team. And what would it take for the Cowboys to have that kind of situation happen? I don't think he would have entertained that at all. Yeah. At all. Their depth on their defensive tackle is terrible. There's so much bad.
Steelers fans need, and the ones that are screaming for his head all the time, I'm wondering what you're looking for. You don't understand how good you have it with Mike Tomlin.
Yeah.
With because to hold that together and to say, all right, we're going to struggle on offense, we're going to rally this defense, and to go out there and do that and pull off, a decent season the way they did. And honestly, I love the fact that they got rid of the first round draft pick because you know what? No excuses for this team. Can't say we just want a better draft pick because you're not going to have one. Kareem wants to know, what receiver stands out to you the most on tape?
Juju Smith-Schuster. He's Hines Ward, man. He is the second coming of Hines Ward. He is that good. He got stomped a good one by Marlon Humphrey for half a game. Marlon Humphrey had his number for half of that game. Chase Claypool is great. I love him to death, but he has a lot of growth. And we're seeing that. He has a lot of growing to do. I hyped him a lot. I believe in him a lot. I think he's getting there. And he is growing as the season continues, but he's got a lot to do. Players are able to shut him down. Deontay Johnson, I love him to death too, but he is what he is. I don't think he is going to grow into a superstar. I think he's going to be that player who starts out and kind of just is what he is. He was mature when he came into the NFL, and he's kind of been that guy since. He's been the same player since he got into it. So to me, it's still Juju. Juju stands out. He's the complete package, and teams are shutting him down.
I love Deontay Johnson and what he can do. It just doesn't seem like he just hasn't got that click with Ben to where they just know what each other's doing all the time, and Ben knows he's going to be there. I think he has that ability from a physical standpoint, but it's just seeing things and dissecting things and knowing what the other's thinking. I just don't see it. I see more mess ups from DJ not being on the same page as Ben more than anybody else. And occasionally, the next closest would be James Washington. I already think that Chase Claypool is much more on the same page with Ben than both of those guys. From what I've seen.
To actually speak what you're talking about with Deontay Johnson, I would call that a lack of focus / attention to detail that we saw with Antonio Brown, where Antonio Brown got in a game and was just locked in. And he mastered all the little details, that whole perfecting, honing his craft, always working on my craft thing that I don't see from Deontay.
Yeah.
I don't see that yet. And the other problem,
don't know if we'll see it at all.
Yeah, I don't know if he's just not that guy.
Yeah. Gotta ask this question from Sean. He says, who do you see as the biggest team to stop the Steelers from winning a title?
Kansas City, man. Mm-hmm. We were built to beat Kansas City until Devin Bush got hurt. With Devin Bush out, you tell me how we're going to defend both Travis Kelce and the running back, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, whether it's him or Bell. How are you defending both of those guys without diverting resources that you can't afford to divert? from guys like Tyreek Hill, Sammy Watkins, Mecole Hardman. We don't without Le'Veon, without Devin Bush. I'm kind of hoping someone else takes them out because I don't think we can.
I know what you mean. There's a lot of stuff that can happen between now and when they would finally face the Chiefs.
Yeah,
they got at least 9 more games.
Yeah, the big caveat there is if this offense can score with them.
Yes.
Which so far, this isn't an offense that can score with the Chiefs.
Yeah.
They have shown an ability to adapt. They've shown ability to change, but man, you got to put together a full game where you're really just moving down the field.
And you're going to get 9 or 10 games until you even have to worry about that. So you have a lot you can figure out for now. But the question was right now.
Right now, that's
where it is right now.
Yeah, that's the team.
I see exactly what you're saying. We got time for a couple more. Rod wants to know, what running schemes do the Steelers have most difficulty with, outside zone or big on big?
It's changed.
Yeah.
It's really changing. Outside zone is a big strength of this team, but not a big strength of our defensive tackles right now. Not with Alu gone. Chris Wormley, as much as he wasn't really showing a whole lot in those kind of in an outside zone, he was phenomenal. Great outside zone defender. But I would say I'm gonna go with the outside zone. Our big strength in outside zone is our edges. I mean, you don't want to run outside zone towards Bud Dupree.
Yeah.
You don't want to run outside zone towards TJ Watt. Like,
nope.
So that's still strength, but the cutbacks are there. The cutbacks are there on those, and they're probably going to continue to be. Robert Spillane was biting hard on the Ravens outside runs, like biting so hard. After the 28-yard run J.K. Dobbins had where he just ran past Robert Spillane started overplaying runs to the outside, and they just cut him back. And that's where you saw almost all the big gains after that. You saw Robert Spillane, give up those cutbacks. And at the same time, the teams aren't really even blocking him like they did Devin Bush, like they're doing Vince Williams. A couple times we've seen them throw a tight end on Terrell Edmonds and leave Robert Spillane unblocked, which shows you they're willing to take chances on him.
Which kind of leads to the next question. We're going to try to do a couple rapid fire real quick right before the end of the show. But Trey wants to know, if you can do this one rapid, what kind of impact you believe Williamson will have once he understands the playbook?
Williamson is the responsible guy. He's not the playmaker. He's not the flash. He's the Ryan Clark kind of guy. He's going to be in the right position. He is not going to over pursue. He's not going to be the guy who bites. He's not going to provide splash plays. He is just going to be in the right place and make a tackle, or be in the right place and convince a running back to go somewhere else.
He's going to be the unsung hero, in other words, you're saying.
Yeah, I think he's a great fit for what we have because he's not a Spillane, he's not a Vince Williams, who are both more guys who will make plays but also give them up.
Gotcha. Very good. Okay. Boing Boom wants to know your thoughts on Justin Lane and Marcus Allen.
Everything I've seen from Justin Lane is great. I like Justin Lane a lot. Marcus Allen, there's a reason they brought up Ulysses Gilbert III to play dimebacker when Bush went down. He's not bad, but he's not good.
There you go. That's a 5th round pick. Sometimes you hit and sometimes you don't. Okay, Steelers Pittsburgh. Do you see Bugs as an every down player?
No, not right now. Not
you see him
right now.
I'll follow up. Do you think
he could
evolve into that?
Yes. Absolutely. Okay. I think he could be a guy who turns into a kind of a Kiesel, a late bloomer, late starter for when Cam Hayward is gone. Yeah,
because I was going to say Alualu's up there too. He's now the Colquitt's gone. Alualu's back to
Alualu's second oldest player on this team.
Yep, it goes Ben
older than both kickers.
Yeah, and then it's Big Al. I think is number 3.
Yeah, then you get to the offensive linemen who are older.
So here you go, Steeler Chick 46. Geoffrey, how many sacks will the Steelers get this year?
I'm going to go 55. I don't think they reached 56. That was kind of a fluky year where they gambled a lot to get it. I'll go 55. Although that's a low number for the rest of the season, isn't it, Dave?
That's why I'm going with my pick from the offseason.
70?
They're going to go. No, I said they're going to hit 60. They're going to hit 60. So
I'm sorry. I look at sack percentages and I look at pressure rates and stuff like that. I don't really look at total sacks. Yeah, 55 is probably too low. If you look at our second half of our schedule, we could go big.
Yes, but guess what teams are going to be trying to do? Just don't let the Steelers get a bunch of sacks. That's going to be what they're going to try to scheme around that as much as anything. Geoffrey, I haven't done a show with you for a very long time. This was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this. I'm kind of glad we got this little bit of extra time here at the end. I hope everyone enjoyed the Ask Geoffrey a Question section. But this was Know Your Enemy. So this ultimately did come down to the Dallas Cowboys. This is I really do feel this is one of those games where the Steelers have every opportunity to come out there and just take care of business. The question, and that's what makes Steeler fans nervous.
Every time, the more we talk about, the more I'm like, oh gosh, I make that prediction like 32-9, and then inside I'm like, oh, we're gonna lose this game. Oh.
So, are you nervous? Are you a little bit nervous?
Absolutely. I'm just glad they don't have some quarterback stashed on their practice squad with like a 4.40. I'm just so glad that isn't the case, because he would just be like, woo, I just ran for a touchdown, and the Steelers would be like, we weren't expecting that.
Well, yeah, because they weren't, because of not being able to expect it. My thing
I'm also expecting Ben to throw like 6 picks in this game, just because how much more Ben Roethlisberger can you get than you win 2 really tough games where he plays really well, takes over that second half, outplays Lamar Jackson, then he goes west to a game that doesn't matter, to a team we don't need to beat for the standings, to a team that's absolutely terrible, and their quarterback is a nobody. How much more on brand would it be for Ben Roethlisberger than to beat all the great teams and then just totally lay an egg and cost the Steelers a game against a team like the Dallas Cowboys? That's Ben Roethlisberger. You want Ben to play good? Give him a primetime matchup. Get him in the playoffs. Get him some team that's really good. Ben will light the scoreboard up. You want to see Ben Roethlisberger forget how to play football? Take him to the West Coast, put him against the team that's a cakewalk, and watch him forget how to play football.
Hey, I'm going to leave Steelers fans with some positive. I'm going to go glass half full to close us out. That was Ben's old elbow. Now we've got Ben's new elbow. Ben's new elbow is not going to lose these kind of games. That's what I'm going to go with right there.
Well,
that's how it works.
I'll also add into that all those games we lost, all the games we lose like that, when Ben plays badly, we had a terrible defense.
Yes.
And we were relying on Ben to win those games. So even if Ben plays terrible, the defense could just be like, look, seriously, do we have to score your touchdowns for you? We will do it if we have to. I think that if they set him up in good field position, he's going to score a touchdown. He pulls that out. Yeah. He'll be like, oh, we're at the 22-yard line and I'm starting to drive. Well, now I guess I have to score a touchdown.
Yeah. Yeah. But you know what's so nice is you have Ben Roethlisberger who can actually do that. And you don't just have to settle for a field goal after gaining 3 yards in 3 plays. So that's what we have to look forward to with the 2020 Steelers. We're looking at history. We're looking to make history, to get to that 8-0. It's never happened. I picked the Steelers to lose this game before the season started, but that's when they were 3-point underdogs. It's completely different now.
When Dallas looked like a good team.
Yes, they did. They really did. It looked like these were 2 equal teams. So this was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. Geoffrey, thanks for all your time. You'll be back with Michael next week. And make sure you are checking out BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. It is your one-stop shop for all things Pittsburgh Steelers. We've got all kinds of great stuff. Geoffrey's film rooms. I do some stat stuff and other things. Lots of commentary. Everything that's on there, it's what you need. And also make sure you are checking out the live YouTube shows. And if you're one of those YouTube people and you haven't checked out the audio show, make sure you do that. If you haven't, my Thursday morning Stat Geek, I will tell you this. I will tease it. The last time the Steelers lost a game to a quarterback making their NFL debut, I will tease you with this. That quarterback is now in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So with that said, we will see you all next time for Know Your Enemy. Good night.